Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the September 14, 2022 Community Pool Project Ad Hoc Committee meeting. I will now call the meeting to order. In attendance today, we have on our council committee, we have Mayor Joe Kelmick, Mayor Pro Tem Mike Verapapa. I'm the Assistant City Manager, Patrick Gallegos. We have the Acting Director of Public Work, Iris Lee, Management Analyst Jennifer Robles, Marine Chief Joe Bailey, Community Development Director Alexis Middle, and Recreation Manager Tim Kelsey. Also in attendance, we have our Griffin Structure team, which consists of Vice President Dustin Alamo. We have Matt Kingdon, he's the Principal Architect with CORE, and Mike Garland, the Principal in charge with Councilman Hansacker. Today, the consultants will present the McGaw Pool Feasibility Study that includes an on-site conditions assessment. We will also hear a presentation from the design team, who will present 5 conceptual plans. And lastly, we'll discuss next steps. But before we get into presentations, seeing no public here in attendance, and we didn't receive any public comments for this meeting, I think we can kind of really get into the presentations themselves, starting with the McGaw Elementary School Feasibility Study. So, Dustin, if you're ready.
Absolutely. So do I really have to speak this? There we go.
I think so.
We're very close. Okay. Well, there's the introduction. You see us, Dustin, Matt, and Mike. We've all come together in efforts to produce a reflection on your existing conditions, as well as the concept designs and a rough order of magnitude of costs for the various options that we're going to talk about today. So for the first piece of work that we are tasked to do was really look at your existing conditions. Next slide, please. About 11 years ago, we did a facility condition assessment on McGaw Pool. And back then, the pool was old and was at the end of its useful life. It was under different consultants. Griffin was a lead, but we brought in different architects and engineers. And in this iteration, we did kind of a cursory review of the facilities again. There have been a couple of upgrades to keep things operational, fix some leaks. But we specifically brought in CORE Design Group with their aquatic architecture experience, as well as Councilman Hunt Saker, with their aquatic specialty service as well. And the overall result is that the building, the facilities have met their useful life. The bottom line is replacement. Everything from degradation of the pool shell, facilities, code requirements aren't up to code in terms of restrooms, shower counts, fixture counts, you name it. The building is just old and is essentially, it wouldn't be wise, in our opinion, to spend money patching and fixing it up. Replacement is really the way to go from a cost perspective. So I'm not going to go through the whole list there on the right, but you can see some of the top issues of key concern. Additionally, the pool infrastructure is original in most cases. All the underground piping has been there since the 60s. And so it's, it's old. Yes. So that being said, we moved into developing concept studies. And Matt, I'll have you kind of go through some of those ideas. Just as a little perspective, we started off with kind of just what does replacement look like as the lowest bar option, and then worked our way up through more advanced designs that maximize the site, maximize the city's budget, and also afford some opportunity for trying to separate operations from the school district, because right now you walk in and you're kind of in the backyard of the school. So those are kind of some key principles that we integrate into the design, and Matt will articulate more on that.
Thanks, Dustin. So it's a little washed out on here. I'll try and walk through this. So like Dustin said, this is what we're calling option 1, which is really what we would consider the baseline. So we tried to look at what the minimum improvements we could do to get the useful life going forward that we would all expect from this type of investment in the facility. So want to touch on some of the key things that we have to do, because you'll see some consistent things throughout all the options. One of which is obviously improvements to the pool. So that includes brand new deck, brand new pool, improvements at a minimum to the pool shell. We know that once we peel that plaster off, there's going to be leaking, there's going to be structural damage in some form. Obviously, we can't quantify that completely at this point, but even to just improve the existing shape of the pool, we know we'd have to do some repairs to the shell. Then there are the code requirements. So code requirements for restrooms. You'll see in all the options, we've added restrooms. Right now, there are shared restrooms between the school and the pool. And that is problematic for a few reasons, but even just quantity of fixtures are not there in terms of what's required for the pool. And so we would propose in every option adding restrooms, ideally separated from the school, restrooms that are just dedicated to the pool facility. And we can get into that more if we need to. But in this option, we're just showing an expansion of the existing restrooms. Maybe they still are separated, but from a cost standpoint, trying to tie into the utilities, there'd be some efficiency there, even though it still causes some operational challenges. Other code requirements, showers. So this would incorporate space for changing and showers. And then storage. Right now, storage is kind of surrounding the pool deck around the edges. We would propose more of a proper kind of covered storage that would make sure that whatever deck materials are in there are going to last longer and not be exposed to elements. And then the other thing is replacing this top pool. So right now, very typical of the times, it was kind of a toddler pool or a wading pool. And so we would propose, as soon as you start doing any improvements to that, it would make sense to really change the program of that and make it more of a teaching pool. In this case, we're not really changing the footprint of it, staying within the existing footprint, but trying to make it a more useful pool, since right now it's not even being used. Yeah, so I'll let Mike speak to the pool itself. Again, this is using the existing pool footprint, not changing any of the real physical limitations of the pool. Go ahead.
Yeah, so as Matt said, it's got two separate bodies of water. And one of the advantages of having two separate bodies of water is there's really two things. One is different temperatures. You're able to, for younger children, you can teach them to swim in warmer temperature water. The second thing is the depth of the water can be different. So shallower depths for the teaching learn to swim programs versus the competitive water polo and swimming and lap swimming can be in the larger pool. So that's really the advantage of having those two separate bodies of water for those two programmatic uses.
And before I got a couple more things
Yep.
here. Before we move on, though, do you want to touch on some of the challenges with the existing pool shape
Sure.
and depths? And
Yeah, I mean, the existing pool shape was great back in the day. Back in the 60s, that L-shaped type of pool was very popular. There's a lot of schools, a lot of communities that had that. It's really changed over the years, and it's not a very common shape today. That geometry, that L-shaped geometry, because you can have a program going on in one direction, but you're really you're kind of forced to have that other piece of the water that is really unproductive. So it's nice to have that a different type shape pool rather than the existing shape that you have today.
If I can interrupt for just 1 second. I didn't mention, Mayor and Council Member, if you'd like to interrupt and ask questions, feel free to do so. This is an active conversation. Or if you prefer, you can wait until the end of each of the presentations to ask them. Up to you.
And then before we move to the next option, I just wanted to touch on kind of some of the restraints or restrictions we have, some of the challenges we're dealing with when we start looking at future options. So Dustin kind of mentioned the shared facilities between the school and the pool currently. We talked about the restrooms, but just from a pure site standpoint, site circulation is a challenge. Right now, there's really no defined entrance to the pool. You have to go on to essentially school campus or within the campus perimeter to get into the pool. That's one of the things we'll try and improve as we look through some of the options. We're really boxed in on 4 sides. It's kind of a 3-sided shape, but we're really boxed in on 4 sides between the parking lot, which we're trying to either expand or keep as is, right? We don't want to lose parking. We're boxed in on that side, the tennis courts, obviously, and then the gym building, and then not only is the playground to the south on this page, but there's a fire lane as well. So we're limited in terms of how much we can move to the south there without causing significant changes and impacts to the school property. So you'll see that as we go. We can touch on some of those things. And then the last thing I wanted to point out is this little piece here is an expansion to the mechanical building. So the blue space here is the gym. There's existing support spaces here for the pool. There's a small office that's used for first aid and basically lifeguards, everything. And then there's a mechanical room that is currently undersized. So by upgrading to current code, the amount of equipment changes and the footprints that they require, we would need a larger mechanical room. And so this little addition here accounts for the added space we would need to add.
So would the changing room be in the bathrooms then? Would the
Correct.
changing room be in the bathroom then?
Correct, yeah.
And the-
So
and the
the bulk
shower?
of the showers and
And the showers.
changing would all be in these 2 additions here and here. We would have some deck showers to hit our quantities.
Where would they be?
To be determined, somewhere on the pool deck.
On the
Yeah,
deck, yeah.
yeah. Other questions on this option before we go?
So I'm assuming then that design number less than 1 would be approved by the Los Alamitos Unified School District, and whatever state requirements are, I heard something about state Board of Education architectural standards and so forth. Okay.
Yeah, so as a shared facility, you're required to go through and basically, have it as if it was a school project, which means approval through DSA. So yes, we have experience with DSA and would meet those requirements as well as health, obviously.
And a question for Joe and Tim. Are we currently using the small pool? Is it being used for swimming lessons? How does that fit in?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. Currently, we are not using that pool. That pool was originally built out of fiberglass, so we're at the point where now fiberglass strands are weeping anytime anybody goes in that pool. So we do not use that pool, and we haven't used it in 10 years or so, longer than that maybe. Why I have the mic up here real quick. With 2 pools, you need 2 pumps. So currently right now, we have 2 pools that are on the same pump. So that's a change also when you look at 2 pools.
But in other words, if we rebuild to that configuration and the small pool would be functional, you would be using it for swim lessons and for the little ones to swim in.
So right now, the current pool there isn't deep enough for swim lessons, I don't think. I don't know if these guys agree with me on that, but normally a swim lesson pool is going to be, like a specific for-use swim lesson pool is going to be 3 feet, and it's going to be 90 degrees, and it's going to be indoors. That's like the standard, even in Southern California, if you're looking just to do swim lessons. So this pool currently, I think it's about 1.5 feet,
Maybe 2.
maybe 2. So, yeah.
So if we rebuild to this configuration, do we want to rebuild the
So we-
small?
We were proposing to improve that pool and increase its depth. Go ahead.
Right, so we would increase that depth of that pool to the appropriate level for swim lessons. So
Okay,
it would
good.
be a 3.5-foot depth pool.
That said, the footprint is relatively small still, so I would say it's still kind of an introduction type swim lessons, and you'd still have to use your main pool for the bulk of your swim lessons.
Is that
'cause it
is
still
that a
small
need, a
footprint.
desire?
So, I've seen these slides now, and so I don't want to get ahead, but I can tell you, in my experience, I'm looking at this through programming at the pool and what we're going to do up there and all the different programs available to us. And I would say having a small pool like that specifically only for swim lessons isn't the best use of the space, in my opinion.
Well,
I would agree with that.
yeah, I agree. I'm just trying to understand, is there any need to have that rebuilt, or do we just cover it over, or does that allow us, assuming, I don't want to jump ahead to slides we haven't seen, but does that mean you can extend the length of?
That's my
So,
concern.
Mr. Mayor, this is, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is, like I said, I don't want to jump too far ahead. There's some other options coming up. And so I don't know what you want
Okay,
to do.
then
Yeah,
Well-
no, Mayor, if I can, I think, I mean, you may have some questions as we go through, so that's fair to ask. But I think as you go through each of the options, I think they're going to answer a lot of your questions, so you may want to hold off.
What's the cost for that option? Estimated cost.
I mean, in general, as you can assume, they build up, right? So
It's,
low to high.
last one's 22.25 million.
Yeah.
Next.
So the goal of option 2 was to stay within the existing footprint of the pool, not expand really the footprint of our secured facility, but improve some of these challenges that we're talking about. So some of the key things, we've changed the shape of the pool, right? So we no longer have our L-shaped pool. We have a more traditional, and I'll let Mike speak to it in a minute. We still have a second pool, but you can see it's a little bit larger. And then we've tried to maximize the deck space where we can, and we've pulled the restrooms off of the school gym building and created a separate pool house that would be dedicated to the pool. We've also explored the addition of an entry building here, so kind of adding admin functions. So that would be office space, lifeguard room, those types of things. And that can help with some of our site security and site circulation, potentially separate circulation from the school. And then still expanding the mechanical building here. So the biggest thing is the change to the pool shapes, which, Mike, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, sure. So as you can see, that teaching pool, as we're calling it, has gotten a little larger. The other thing that's happened to it is there's a zero depth entry to get into it, so meaning that it's kind of like a beach entry. So it gradually slopes down to about 3.5 feet. So it provides that little extra feature because we made it bigger from option 1 in order to accommodate that. And then the competition pool is just your standard 6-lane, 25-yard pool. It can accommodate water polo, swimming, lap swim, recreational swimming.
And with this option, we're also removing the handball courts to the south. The school district did mention that they were open to that. So in this option, we do infringe in that area with the addition of the restroom changing facilities.
Well, you could still have a back wall where the kids could hit a
Good.
ball against or something
Sure.
like that.
They just don't use it. That was their point.
Now that little entryway on the north side, how do you see that? I mean, I see it as a rectangle, but is it like a gate? Is it
Right.
a building that you have to walk through? Is it?
So it would
I mean,
be
it's
it would be
obviously-
a building. I mean, there's a few ways we could do it, and really it would depend on a further analysis on the circulation for the school itself, right?
Right.
How do they use that area?
They
Right
use
now,
it-
I know they use it to get from the parking into that, and they've got some pickup here. So
Well, I mean, the gym's used like every day, 7 days a week.
in this case,
I-
we would hope to reroute their circulation
Well, there's
kind of
there's-
around.
Well, right in front of there is the kids' corner, so I wouldn't think you'd want a bunch of adults or anybody going through the kids' corner, so to speak, if that's the main entry to the kids' corner. Also, that building, just south of that little rectangle is a storage unit. Every year, they have a carnival, and there's a lot of equipment. They have the carnival on the baseball field, and it's their biggest fundraiser of the year. So access to that, and I mean, I did about 7 years of carnivals there for my kids, and well, I mean, it's a pain because it's a lot of material, and we would use the parking lot and the route where the yellow buildings are, like simultaneous. It depends, because it's like a bunch of worker bees or ants just working around there. We would pull a big flatbed truck in the parking lot and park it right where that proposed entryway is, and we just load it up, and then they would go around counterclockwise in. I mean, I'm sure they can do it other ways. I'm just saying it's a pain in the neck because it's always towards the October months, and it's always hot and busy and just cumbersome.
But you're
Would that
done.
storage be
I'm done.
better off down here by the baseball field?
Would what?
Would that storage be better off down here by the baseball field?
Well, it's up to the school. I mean, that'd be ideal. That'd be good, I
'Cause I
guess.
think in
'Cause
this
it-
option specifically, we are trying to, pull the program spaces for the pool into these buildings, and that does potentially free up some space used
No,
as
yeah.
storage for the pool.
Yeah.
So
Drive around.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to do it. Yeah, that would help a lot, I
Inside.
would imagine.
yeah, I mean we can reflect that on here
Yeah,
too. Just
that's
so
a good
it's
point.
pointed out.
But access to the gym would be a little different too, I think, 'cause
Totally agree. And right now, we haven't shown this closed off. So this fence still goes here, and there is a walkway that routes because we haven't had those conversations, right?
just- yeah, just food for thought.
Yeah. All right. And then, so in this option, rather than trying to push into the playground, we did look at, okay, what would it look like if we expanded into the tennis courts instead? In option 3A and 3B, they're very similar in terms of kind of the things we're trying to achieve. There's some differences in the pool, which I'll let Mike speak to in a minute. But in both options, we've eliminated one tennis court and replaced it with 2 pickleball courts, and then taken over the rest with some building footprint. So in this option, and some of these components are interchangeable, but so we can talk about, that a little bit if we want to, but trying to increase pool deck to be more appropriate to the size of pool, trying to expand our area a little bit. So what we did is buildings moved over here, and then the pool deck actually expands, and we take away this pump building here. So we go all the way up to the gym wall. There's still a walkway for the school that would be outside of the secure fence, but by adding this square footage, we've given ourselves a little more breathing room on this side for a larger pool deck, which Mike can speak to the numbers, but there's kind of like goals for proportions of pool deck to water surface. So we're getting closer to that ideal number, but in this option. And then the other thing is in this one, the building components all get kind of into one building rather than the last option where they're kind of spread throughout. We could still look at improving this entry if we can figure out some of those circulation issues, or this program could also get combined into this building if we wanted to leave that open. But one of the goals was how to create a better front door to the pool. How to identify the pool separately from the school, right? So that's why we continue to show this, some building element there to help identify that.
So that, is that a bulkhead between the 2 pools? Is that a movable bulkhead or just?
It is.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
let me show you real quick. So these options are very similar. This one still has two pools. We'll talk about some of the other differences, and this one is 1 pool. So Mike can speak. To
Yeah, this is, in regards to the pools, it's a single body of water, so it requires 1 recirculation system, as Joe was referencing earlier, where you need 2 for the 2 bodies of water. This has a single recirc system. The disadvantage is you've got the same temperature on both sides of that bulkhead, right? The difference is that on that top portion up there, you've got some shallower depth. So even though that bulkhead's movable, you can't move it all the way to the north because the depth is a little shallow there. On the north, the stairs are on the north side of that north part of the shallow water. So it's going to start, again, very, very, very shallow, and it's going to slope down to about 4 or 5
So what's the
feet.
total length you can get?
So from that, you can take that to 25 meters. So it's
Is
a
that the
25.
maximum right there then?
That's it. It is because the code requires you to have 4 feet of water below the bulkhead, and so you've got to have enough depth.
Would you need a bulkhead
Would you need one?
at all? I mean.
Yeah, in order
I
to
mean, I'm
have
just- I don't know.
competitive swimming, they need something to turn
I mean, to
on.
get a bigger lap is what I'm thinking, because, I mean, huh?
Yeah, it's just you need a wall to turn on.
That's why the bulkhead.
I know, but if you eliminate it, you turn on the other end, right? I mean,
Too shallow.
Yeah.
well, what if you made
Yeah.
it deeper?
You could.
I mean, I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah,
I don't
for
know.
sure.
Recreation purposes, you could do that, but for competitive swimming, you need to have.
Correct. Right.
distance.
That's the right answer.
So you have the same situation where you block off access to the gym. There's also a few trash dumpsters they use in the parking lot. Do you lose parking spaces in this configuration?
So Again, I think some of that still needs to be explored further with the school and can we accommodate their dumpsters in other ways or stuff like that. So there would definitely be some ongoing conversations.
Do
In
you
that
lo-
area though, we did, in this option, look at, one of the things we're trying to do is improve maybe drop off along the front of the pool. And in this one, we did show actually an expansion of parking into that area. We think this area, which is some of the area you're talking about with the dumpsters, could be
Yeah.
better utilized. It could be
In a
kind
better
of
spot.
reconfigured in a little bit. We can do some things with
I mean,
the
that's-
dumpsters. Parking's at a premium.
It's
we
a
know,
hard
and they're-
place to get in and out of
Yeah.
when there's cars. Like the guy was there today, and it's just a big pain in the neck. Now, I don't know much about pickleball, but I would say that that's going to be a popular spot. And it's almost too good of a good thing, personally.
Former pickleball executive.
I mean, I love pickleball, but I just seeing the success at Marina Park, which is on First Street, if you go there at any given time, it'll be busier than the pool, like at certain times of the day, and probably more times in the day. And I don't know if that's personally a good thing, because I just don't see how, it's going to be, I love pickleball, but it would be very, very, very busy. And if you're never going to close that park and no one's going to monitor it, that pickleball court, that's going to be a nightmare. I can tell you that right now. It's a nightmare now. And we have 17 courts at one location and 4 at another location. And they're busy. And between the pool, the gym, and the pickleball and the tennis, there's not going to be any room for any students or teachers or parents to be there. And so maybe the entry building could be where the pickleball courts are, type of thing.
I was going to ask, what's your thoughts on
I mean-
losing the one tennis court?
1 or 2 tennis courts.
We
One,
would lose one. And right now there's 3.
well, you
In
have
this
2
case, we've
there,
taken
right?
over. Yeah, we would leave 2.
Well, you move the entryway where the pickleball court is and leave the 2 tennis courts,
Yeah, agree.
right? And then
Are you talking about relocating the pickleball courts from that location?
eliminating the pickleball court,
Oh.
yeah. I don't know if the residents would like it, because it's loud.
It is.
And it's a lot closer here than it is Marina. And we have gotten a few complaints, and I don't live too far from there myself. But I just think it's a nightmare waiting to happen. Tim, do you agree? You've been around pickleball a little bit. Well, I love pickleball. But I think it has to be maintained. It cannot be it can't be free reign, because it's free reign at Marina Park, and it's,
For sure, Councilman Verapapa, pickleball courts are heavily used, so I would assume they'd be heavily used in this area.
and if it's free, it's even more heavily used. So I would be hesitant at best.
Would there be a way to utilize the pickleball courts in a different manner? Similar to what we're at the club, it's monitored, where you have to pay to use it, or if it became an adjunct of the pickleball,
If it's-
tennis and
if it's-
pickleball center.
If it's maintained, possibly, or, you can put, stripes on a tennis court, and then they could use them if they want, and then if people bring their own net, the school could use them if they wanted to. I know, one of the middle schools in Los Al School District has pickleball club, but they use it after hours, and they put their own nets down. So I'd just be hesitant, but I think you can kind of put a stripe on a tennis court and let people bring their own nets, and it's a little bit more cumbersome, and not everyone's just going to freeload, if you will. I don't mind residents using it, but when people start coming from out of the city in masses, not just like 2 or 3 or 4 people. I've been witness to a lot of that, so I'd be a little bit hesitant on that. I think the entryway would be a great entryway, visitor center, or whatever you want to call it, or waiting room, and then you can leave the walkway open,
Right.
so they have access.
From a design standpoint, I think we would totally agree. That would clean up the site plan quite a bit. To be honest, we were trying to look at ways to utilize the tennis court space to expand the pool, but still give back some court space. So from our perspective, it was a compromise to maybe give back some pickleball, even though we're taking away a tennis court. Your points are completely valid. If we're okay losing a tennis court and utilizing that entire tennis court space for the pool, it would clean up the circulation and
Yeah,
separation
yeah.
between the school tremendously.
Yeah, I mean, how does the city plan to maintain the pickleball court?
Well, I think you said it. We're having a tough time doing that now, right? So I think that's where the concern comes from. And even if you monetize it in a way where you have, I think we just revised our schedule, right? The people are still going to show up. If you build it, they will come. I think if you build it, there's a parking issue now. Certainly, there'll probably be a parking issue, and people are willing to spend money to play pickleball. as we
Especially with a
learn.
new pool. I mean, with a new pool, you're gonna get more people. I mean, the nice thing, it's a local, use facility as a whole, the whole thing. And not that other people don't come, but Chief Bailey?
If I may, the way I was looking at this when I saw this is going to be a whole community area, because there's going to be, at the entry office, there's going to be someone to check swimmers in, and we have swimming from 6 in the morning until 9 at night. And so there's going to be a staff member in that office that could actually then monitor the pickleball or the tennis courts, and we could make it more of a community center that's manned, because there's already going to be someone in that position.
And if
7 days a week?
So Saturday and Sunday, we're there from from 8 to noon, so not in the afternoons, on the weekends.
What if it was by reservation?
Yeah.
And you had the,
Yeah, I guess my point is, I think there's a lot of options, because we do have a staff member there
Right.
already.
Well, that helps. I mean,
Yeah.
that helps. So,
Reservations aren't that easy without staff monitoring. So I will say any kind of reservation system, from my experience, doesn't work unless there's staff on site during any hours of operation. So we do have the infrastructure to do it, but it just requires a body.
well, I think if you go that direction, there should be a notice to residents within, I don't know how many hundreds of feet, and get their opinion, because it's loud. It's loud, and there's houses literally right across the way there, and that wind, that carries north, and it's loud. So I would at least inform them and get their input, maybe with a radius of some sort, because you'd hate to put it up and go, oh my God, what do we do? And all of a sudden, there's especially if it's as busy as I think it's going to be.
what if you go back to one of the other alternatives where the pickleball courts were at the bottom?
What's wrong with sorry?
That way, would that improve the noise?
I think it would help
Problem.
the north end, not the west end, like Riviera, but yeah, that helps too.
Right.
Where would you enter in the pickleball court?
Off the pool area?
Still through the pool?
Yeah, so in this case, it would either be shared access with the tennis courts, or you'd have to provide access, from the backside.
But we'd still want them to come through the gate,
Yeah.
But that doesn't help the pool, because look at now you have two pools. I mean,
Well, yeah, this pool configuration could work either way. This was a similar alternative, just with trying to show an alternative here with the building. This is trying to do exactly what you were saying, which is move the entry building out of here
Yeah.
and move it here. It makes sense to do that if you can kind of combine building structure, but how well utilized are those tennis courts? Are we?
they're busy, but not extreme. I mean, there's 4 people on them, on the weekends type of thing. And then every hour there's another 4 people. And then every once in a while there's, maybe a lesson or two where people are hitting 1,000 balls, but not 24/7 like pickleball court. But they're utilized. But I think utilized little enough to where you can eliminate one and it would still be okay.
Right.
But I think, now we're focusing on pickleball when this should be a pool focus, and maximizing the space for a pool for lap, swim, and potential club activities.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think if we're okay utilizing one of these tennis court areas to expand the pool, it would allow us to clearly separate the school circulation and stuff like that. So we can definitely work up an option of
one pickleball.
of that.
A lot less people.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be fine too,
Yeah.
because I mean, you can see the building footprint we're missing in this layout is this little yellow square. So that could easily, that's about the same size as a pickleball court.
Or
So
just
if you
a s-
incorporated this yellow box into this building footprint, put all the pool functions in one building, you would still have room for one pickleball court, I would say.
You know, another thing you could do is you could put a basketball court there with like pickleball lines, like a mixed use.
Okay.
And then people can bring their own net, you know, and then they can, you know, if they really want to play, they're dragging a net in there, and then it could be mixed use and maybe even, you know, handball or whatever type of thing, or,
Okay.
you know, just, I would just hate to see it be overrun by pickleball people
Right.
that want free pickleball, and that's what they're doing now in Marina Park.
Yeah.
Go by there on your way out, you'll see 24/7, it's like mayhem, it really
Okay.
is, but.
So just to kind of clarify the difference between option 3A and 3B, it's basically the single body of water with the movable bulkhead versus the two bodies of water. So you have two water temperatures more conducive to lessons in that
And two
smaller pool.
pumps.
To research
You would
systems.
also have, yeah, two circ systems. So
Yeah.
that's really the difference between 3A and 3B. We showed two different configurations for the buildings and stuff, but again, that piece is really interchangeable. And then the last option we put together is, you know, completely taking a tennis court, not replacing with pickleball. And again, there's 5 different ways you could lay this out, but we were trying to get a larger pool footprint in this one. So Mike, you want to speak to that? Because that's really the big
Sure.
takeaway from this option.
Yeah, the larger footprint here is you've got an 8-lane pool instead of a 6-lane pool, so you've got 2 extra lanes in the 25-yard north-south direction there. And we also show some diving down on the south side of the movable bulkhead. It doesn't have to be used for diving if that's not, you know, a big program in Seal Beach, but if we believe that's a good use, then we can certainly design it that way, but we can design it in other programmatic uses as well.
So I think the important thing here is that we think that this option is worth showing because if we were to do this facility and say, okay, what's the right size for this community? I think this is what we would recommend if we had a fresh site and we could recommend something from an aquatic standpoint. You could move the buildings, we could shuffle this option around and, like I said, multiple different ways, but it's really a programming question if we want to get this expanded pool capacity and programming for option 4.
And you lose a
That's the
tennis, you lose a
important
tennis
thing,
court here as
and
well.
completely losing the court space. Good point.
So the bulkhead only moves north, it doesn't move south?
No, it will move both directions here.
Oh, well.
Yep.
So it's shown in kind of the ideal location for competitive swimming.
Right.
So that's 25 meters up to,
It can be, it could be parked at a 25-meter location or a 25-yard location for a 25-meter or 25-yard. Or you can even slide it further south and set it up for competitive water polo, a 30-meter by 25-yard course.
Now, I notice in this one, your locker and bathroom facilities seem much smaller, because I don't really have any, you know, to scale it. I mean, is the pink building adequate for those facilities?
It is, yeah. I know we can't read it with the small font, but the square footages of all these program elements are identified here in this
Okay.
list here. So it might be a different footprint. And again, we were trying to show all the different ways you could place these buildings, just to
Okay.
show all the different options. In this case, we pushed more into this part of the playground, but left this part open, and that could be
Okay.
really more of a conversation with the school.
And what is that in the left side? Is that water or is
Yeah,
that?
this is a second body of water, similar to the other option where we showed
Toddler
a
pool?
teaching pool.
It's a teaching pool again, yeah, for swim
Okay.
lessons, learn to swim.
And it just uses the same circulatory system?
No, it's a separate recirc system. If you have 2 bodies of water, again,
Oh,
2 separate
okay.
pumps, 2 separate filters, right.
so-
It also functions in a recreation component too, where you have your younger kids obviously in that pool during your weekend rec swim.
I'd like to ask Chief Bailey, is that a desire to have a toddler pool, or is that a necessity? Or, to me, it seems a little bit too much with if you have 2 pumps and 2 this and 2 that, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the needs are for the community. What would
Right,
you
we
think?
have a pretty good swim lesson group every summer, and it's something that I've been looking to expand. And so swim lessons are really important, especially for a beach community, right? To have kids learn to swim. It's the number one way to prevent drowning. So with all that being said, I just think you could teach swim lessons in the regular pool without that, right? There's the advantages. I know a guy that's probably the biggest swim lesson provider in Southern California, and he just built a purpose-built pool in Rancho Cucamonga. He's building another one up in Central California right now, and it's 3 feet deep, it's indoors, and the water's 90 degrees. And we don't need that, because that's just really limitation, right? That's a big limitation. So in my mind, it's hard to say either way, but I like multiple use pools, and I think if you're limiting to one use, and there is other, you could play around in this, toddlers can be in this, and it'd be great, but I think the main purpose is swim lessons, which is not a bad thing, but when we're looking at the costs, I think.
But for toddlers or for every multiple
Pretty much
ages?
any level swim lesson until you start swimming laps, you could do in the 3-foot swim lesson
So could
pool.
you do that in a single pool with a bulkhead?
You could. So currently we have platforms that are made out of PVC, and it's a common device used in swim lessons. So the instructor can actually be standing in 4 feet of water, even though it's a 6-foot pool, and the kid will come swim to them, and there's a level for the kid to stand on. And so there's ways to work around not having a specific lesson pool.
So with that in mind, if you eliminated the toddler pool in this configuration and put the bathroom, changing room over there, and then I think if there's a way to give the school a couple more parking spaces, that would go a long way, even if it's, 3. It's like it's more, because you don't want to take away any, and I don't think you are. But if you can, move that building, I'm not sure about closing off the access to the gym again. I'm not sure. I don't know, Tim, you're involved a lot more than I am, but just the circulation part of it, and I know they use that access a lot, they were using,
Yeah, the main gym access is up there, you're correct. So we would just have to figure it out. But there are gym doors on either side, so, we could adjust as is necessary. We would just have to work that out, so.
that building can move, the entry building could be moved to the west easily, right? And then you could still have that access if you wanted to, but, that looks good. Then you could probably make the pool a little longer too, right? If you really wanted to.
Maybe.
Well, I guess those are the other questions I have. On this design, can you go, normally if you would go you would have a 25-yard pool, and then if it was a square, it wouldn't quite be a square, but it'd be 25 meters going the other way. So I'm looking at this. Could you go yards across the way the lane lines, if it's 8 lanes, is that 25 yards?
In this configuration, it's not 25 yards across. It would be 25 meters across.
He's asking if you got.
So it'd be meters across and yards where the lines are?
Dustin, can you zoom in on that?
Well, the movable bulkhead, you can be adjusted to 25 meters or 25 yards.
I see what you're saying, but going
Take
across
off
8
that
lanes
stuff.
is.
That way?
Yeah.
Could you borrow
Going across
some-
that way is how many yards?
Yeah, it's 25 meters. That way.
There you go.
Oh,
There are some dimensions.
yeah, as long
There are
as you
some
don't have to
dimensions
read
there,
this
so what does it say? I believe it's 25
Yeah.
meters across, right?
So
No,
what
I'm
would you
wrong.
recommend, Chief Bailey?
Well, if I had it my way, it'd be a 50-meter pool and 25 yards one way and 50 meters the other way with the bulkhead.
Can we get-
So it'd actually be like a 51-meter
It
pool.
won't fit.
Yeah, 51-meter pool. But that would be my preference.
What I like about the concept, not necessarily the specifics, is that looks more like a community pool area. Where what we have now is you come in behind the fence and fall into the pool, within a couple of feet. And this has a more, even, with the additional, the toddler pool. What order of magnitude are we talking about? I know that it's 2 systems, which require, 50 years of maintenance. Is the cost, does that start putting us over the top in terms of cost?
That's a good lead into the next slide if you want to talk through costs.
Oh, there's more.
Yes, there's
I
more.
think one more thing about the toddler pool too to remember is that it's only used, the swim lessons usually only take place 10 weeks out of the year. And the toddler pool only really serves 2 levels of lessons, would you say? You'd be your tiny tots and your level 1. And then by level 2, well, but by level 2, you're really progressing where you need to swim a little bit more distance that I don't think that would even really give you at 3 feet. Because level 2 is usually 6 to 7-year-olds.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that ultimately, I think the lesson pool would be, like I said, be great for, we have currently 6 levels, and the last 2, they're in the lane swimming. So the first 3 or 4 levels you could do in the pool they're showing here without an issue.
I like the idea of 8 lanes too.
And then really, just real quick, we do have plans to increase our swim lessons to maybe not year-round. We're not going to go the 3 coldest months of the year, but we're looking to expand lessons for 9 months out
So
of the year.
is more laps better? More lanes better?
Well, so I'm talking about the small pool that was in this illustration. And either way, my plan is still to increase swim lessons throughout the year, minus the 3 coldest winter months of December, January, February. Other than that, we're planning on doing, and we'll get wetsuits or whatever we need to do to make that happen, but that's the ultimate plan.
So you're advocating a small pool?
Like I said, I think it's a great thing. Ultimately, where it falls money-wise, I think there's some other stuff you could do, which would be better, meaning bigger, as far as the main pool goes, or I just think there's some other stuff you can do that would be more cost-effective than that small pool.
I do too.
I think-
What were your ideas?
Well, like I said, bigger is better. I think, to me, the more users...
Bigger, like longer, or bigger, wider?
Longer, I would say, I don't think we can fit 50 meters in
So
there. though. These guys-
maximize the length.
So then, to me, it's like you want to make sure you can run a 30-meter water polo game, and then you want to be able to, ideally, lap swimmers in our community want to swim 25 yards. They don't want to swim meters. They want to swim yards generally. And then, but then with all that, you got to look at water polo, swim lessons, all kinds of recreation stuff. We had that great summer this year where we had 40 to 60 people for our 1 hour of recreation swim in the summertime. There's all these really cool inflatable ninja water courses that we want to use on a weekend to attract people. There's all kinds of stuff like that. And then like storage for the pool covers. I don't see that there, but that's got to go somewhere. Storage for the lane line reels. So there's a lot of things that we would want ultimately before that small teaching pool, in my opinion. And like I said, and that's just looking at the programming of the whole thing from my perspective.
Okay, so, again, one of the points I think that we have to keep in mind is that whatever the cost is, this has to be sold to the community and to show the community that there are benefits for us encumbering ourselves to build this pool. And so one of the points that I would make with people, because when their first argument was, well, they have the ocean. And my response has been, you don't learn to swim in the ocean. We need a facility, we need a pool. And so if the smaller additional space is going to greatly increase our ability to teach our kids to swim, there may be an advantage, even though the cost up front may be somewhat more, and the long term. But if we'll be teaching more kids to swim in town, that's an advantage that we can certainly tout when it comes to getting people's support.
Well, if I may, I think the goal is to maximize the space we have available for a pool. So putting a toddler pool doesn't help that. Putting a building on the north end that constricts the length of the pool doesn't do that. But you can use that whole west side as, storage, bathroom, entryway. You know, if you went up that dog leg, just that whole left perimeter, you could use all that for that type of issues. You know, the pool equipment, the bathrooms, the changing room, the shower, and then you could lengthen that pool, as Chief Bailey was kind of requesting, to get the maximum use of the pool. And I think that would be advantageous. Now, I'm not sure if a diving end is better than a lower end. I'm not sure what the best needs are, or, you know, so whatever I think Chief Bailey and Tim think would be used by the community is what I would recommend with that bulkhead part. I'm not sure what the best use of that.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if we're going to be having divers in there. I mean, we don't have divers now, right? I mean, do we have? I mean, maybe they jump in, but there's no diving per se. They're not-
The Los Alamitos High School team borrowed, but they won't be anymore because they have a brand new diving complex. So,
Right. So.
and our pool manager won't let people do backflips, which I did this summer and got in trouble for.
Right, so the diving is a nice concept, but it's not a necessity, you know, so any way to maximize the pool and get everything else in would be the best configuration, I think.
You know, when looking at this just as it looks like there's a lot more deck space up in that northern end. Do we want residents to bring their kids to the pool for their lessons or to whatever, and bring their beach chair and hang out? That's just, I don't know. Is that something that we would want to encourage? And then it becomes more like the pool at the Navy where, you know, it was like,
It's a great question. Currently, we make parents sit outside on the bleachers outside the gate, and I don't know that that's a great thing. I think if we had a night, I mean, when I look at all these renderings, I think, boy, there's some great areas where you could really make people feel comfortable and come in and sit down and relax. We would supply the lawn chairs or the loungers. That would be part of what we would have on the pool deck ultimately. And, you know, I see maybe there's even room for a green little hill somewhere that people can hang out on and make it a real nice community pool.
yeah.
So.
Just to give you some guidelines, that most cities and communities, when they build a pool, they have about 2 to 2.5 ratio from pool deck space to pool water space.
Okay.
So you really want to have some space for those non-bathers to hang out, watch their kids swim, you know, that kind of thing.
The little leg on the top left of the pool, is that just an entryway of steps?
Yeah,
and
so that's
stairs?
that's an entryway, and so the idea here is we have an all-deep pool so that it can accommodate water polo and competitive swimming.
Right.
And so you need that little dog leg in order to meet the slope requirements of code.
And should the pool be either 25 meters or 50 meters? In other words, if you were able to pick up another 3 feet at the bottom and another 3 feet at the top, or 4, does that help us in any way, or does it just, it's extra water to heat?
No, it absolutely does. The more square footage area of water you have, you'll be able to use. I mean, the idea here is we've got a space requirement we're trying to fit things into.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. We could extend it north and south and make it longer. Now, and you can just move that bulkhead to accommodate the
Yeah.
race course dimensions.
Because especially, you know, I mean, again, even though we're talking about maybe deck space as being a factor, but, you know, if the entry control building was moved, you know, maybe over to the left, or in other words, then you might have several feet to add on. And just tell the people it's 50 meters, and maybe that'll satisfy those clubs.
I think there's a like you mentioned diving, so versus doing a zero entry and making it more of that teaching area. So we know we can't accomplish everything in the space we have. If we did say, hey, we want to go more recreation, we want to attract people to come hang out for an entire day, right? And we want to keep them there. There could be additional recreation components. We design it more towards the inflatables or even incorporating spray features and stuff like that. We can go more the recreation route, or you can go more the competition route, and which starts getting into, okay, could you do competitive diving and stuff like that? And will they come if you build that type of facility? So part of this, I think, is figuring out, you know, what those targets are. Is it more of a competitive? Is it more swim lessons? Is it more recreation? we can probably achieve 2 of the 3, fairly
I would say
effectively.
no diving.
Yeah, kind of.
From what I see, from what I've seen.
That's what I
I'm
heard
not-
from
I
high
don't
school,
know.
got a diving facility.
I would, so that's one.
Yeah.
So use the other 2.
And that's why I was making that point, because I think if we start to expand the pool, while you might not increase your competition ability, because we'd have to go to that 50 meter in order to get it,
Yep.
which we can't do, we could increase the recreation component. So
Easily.
we could, yeah.
I think that's something Chief Joe Bailey would want, right? More recreation space versus a diving center?
As I said before, Councilman Farapapa, more space in my mind is better, right? So we just more things. I'm really happy to hear what these guys are saying. I think they make a great point that the main pool there is all deep. And then that's why they have the shallower pool. So now after I hear that, I go, oh, that makes sense, right? So I think it's a great comment that we as a city need to decide what we're shooting for. And in my mind, it's kind of a little of everything. And so we want to be able to have competitive events, or maybe not events, but we want our lap swimmers to be happy with 25 yards. I want to swim 25 yards, right? And so I think we need that. I think that's one of the things we need. And then I look at the other stuff. It's like, well, we want to have great recreation. We want people to use the pool. We want them to become good swimmers. We live in an ocean community, so that stuff's all important, along with the swim lessons.
So what are your thoughts on a bulkhead, an immovable bulkhead? I mean, do you think it should be stopped at a lower end, like the other previous configuration, where the bulkhead or the low end was on the north side, or just keep going deeper and the thing can move all the way to the external part of the pool?
I haven't had a chance to really think that through, but I think that when you're looking at this design, the bulkhead's there to make sure you have 25 yards for the lap swimmers. And so I would venture to guess if we had this pool built right now, that we wouldn't move the bulkhead that often. The only reason would be to maybe accommodate a water polo game, right? And most of the water polo now is 25 yards rather than they've lowered it from 30 meters to 25 yards. So ultimately, that's the only reason you'd move the bulkhead in this scenario, is to accommodate a water polo game. But otherwise, you'd leave it where it was for the lap swimmers and the swim teams, just like that.
So would the south end of that pool be better deeper or shallower for your use?
Well, now that I've heard all the information, if you're not going to have the second teaching pool, it'd be nice to have an area that was not quite 8 feet or whatever the general pool is here.
7, I think.
7. So it'd be nice to have something that's more like 5 feet. But then there's issues of you're not really going to want to start a swim race in a 5-foot pool because people dive. So I think there's a million factors. I can't just give you off the top of my head what I think.
That's our job, though. I mean, I think
Yeah.
understanding that diving isn't a priority and the recreation and teaching is a priority, we can look at different pool configurations
Right.
that accommodate that with this same concept. Whether it's one pool, we can look at that versus having the second pool still. But
Well, technically, you could move that bulkhead to make a bigger recreational pool if you
Correct.
wanted to at certain times of the year, right?
That's correct. You can move that all the way almost to the north, and
Depending on how many people come to the pool for that recreational event with
Right.
the floaties and all that pool party stuff,
Right.
so. But wasn't one of the configurations that end of the pool was shallower, and you said you couldn't move it
Yeah.
further north?
correct.
So that's an option too, right?
Hmm?
If I could just weigh in real quick, I have been a competitive swimmer, and having that other section at least deep enough for a warm-up area when you're actually got a competition going on
That's a
is,
good idea too.
I mean, it's not,
We'll have to
It
hear
would
more
work.
about that.
Bring in your trophies.
I didn't see that coming.
yeah.
Well, that's another configuration. What option is that? Do we see that one yet?
The-
Is that 5?
It's option 3A.
Oh,
3A, I
3A?
think, yeah,
Oh, that's with the pickleball course again.
yeah.
So it looks like we have some really great feedback, and I'm sure you guys have a ton of questions. And as we, discuss your feedback, and along with Chief Bailey, I think there's a lot of things to consider. But with that, if you don't have any other questions on these specific options, Dustin's going to kind of go over the big reveal.
The suspense.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sitting,
Okay,
trying to get myself braced against the
we
back
can go
of the
to the
chair.
next slide, please. Thanks. Okay, a little hard to read, but we basically broken up the costs into 5 categories to keep it pretty simple. First category is construction costs, so material and labor. Second category is FF&E, fixtures, furnishings, and equipment, so things like, desks and pool equipment, things like that. Architecture and engineering services, item 3. Construction management inspection fees are number 4, and then contingency, just because this is very conceptual at this point, both on the construction side as well as professional service side. Sorry. So as you scroll across the screen here, we have the 5 option. Option 1 being the replace in kind. Total cost for that is $12.8 million. Scrolling over to option 2, the 25-yard pool with the teaching pool, you're a little over $14 million. Option 3A, that stretch 25, the one body of water, 17.3 million-ish. Option 3B, the 25-yard and teaching pool, equates to 15.7, and then option 4, the stretch 25 and teaching pool is 16.2.
So if you remove the teaching pool, what would that take out roughly?
I
A
would,
lot, right?
I would guess probably about $500,000.
That's it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a huge cost. I mean, it's still money,
Well, what
but
about the pool equipment and all that stuff? that goes
Yeah,
in?
so that would include the pool shell, the pool equipment, and what Dustin's talking about. At the
Building a home.
same time, I'm sorry.
So, where's Barb?
So we're not exactly going to get into funding options today. We will at a later date. Like I said, we wanted to get into sort of the questions that you had, the feedback that you wanted to provide, and to present to you those options for consideration. There are some next steps, obviously, speaking with the school district to find out where they're at with some of our suggestions here and conceptual plans. So we'll be doing that. And this is the start of several conversations. This is your first time seeing these concepts. And obviously, one of the most, I think, limiting things is funding. So we'll get into that as well and discuss that more internally, of course, with our city manager and our executive staff and with you.
I was just going to say, when we start talking about these costs, even before we talk about the funding, I'd like to be able to answer the questions that will undoubtedly come up. How much was the Los Al pool? And why is this so much? How much are the pools that the Long Beach is working on? I know they're proposing a pool for the north end of Long Beach, and they're saying this could cost, up to $10 million. I'd like to be able to know, so we can answer the residents and say, well, this is because we're doing this, this, and this, and the Long Beach pool is just a pool, or
And Leisure World just did a pool. too,
yeah.
so.
So and then being able to explain that from the time that the Los Al pool was built, costs have gone up 30%, and so that pool today would cost much closer to the numbers. I just want to be able to cover those bases. I think.
Yeah, and I understand those points. I can tell you that, I was recently speaking to some staff and read a recent article, maybe you guys know about this, but the city of Oxnard recently approved a pool that I think it started hovered around $10 to $15 million, and now they've just approved about an $80 million pool. Most of it-
52.3.
50, oh, did it go down? Oh, okay, 53. So it's, and most of it
It
bonded,
really
right?
all-
Most
It
of
really
it,
all depends on scope.
right.
I mean, what's the program? What's the scope? How much body of water? What are the buildings? Right now, these costs we're including escalation up to the midpoint of construction. So we're looking out into the future and projecting where costs are going. So it's not today's dollars; it's November 2024 dollars.
And these costs have the bathrooms, the pickleball courts, all that stuff.
Everything
included,
baked in.
so.
White wall tires, the whole thing.
So eliminate all
No.
that stuff.
This is not the Cadillac option.
This is, certainly a great presentation. I really want to thank you, because it's, even though we took each of the 4 options and created, 6 more options, the idea that we have this space, how can we maximize it? And so, I'm guessing that whatever you come back with after talking to the district, and when we start having these meetings, I mean, that's the range that we're probably going to be looking at cost-wise, and then it's just a question of how we utilize that space and what we put in there. I don't think I don't think that the cost will change that, well, I mean, unless we start adding, saunas.
So
and,
maximize the pool space and minimize the cost. That's how
Yeah.
how hard is that?
The cost,
Done and done.
Space drives
Done
the
and done.
restrooms
Thank you.
and
I'll donate a couple of Chase lounges.
there we go.
for
The,
this.
the cost could change if the program changes in the wrong direction, and
Yeah.
it can cost more if there's a significant delay in making a decision.
Yes.
Time is money
That's
in this
something that we
market.
definitely
Yeah, no,
want to do.
no, we thank you for your feedback. I think one of the important things, if we go back, can we go back to that, just one of the options, which I thought was interesting, I just realized it. Maybe it's because we're a small community, and we don't title it as such, but what we're really looking at is a sports complex. I mean, we really have baseball, handball, though it's not used. We got swimming. We got all the different school activities. We have, all of these things, tennis, with a small footprint of parking. I mean, so there's noise, there's, parking issues, and those things aren't going to go away no matter how we configure this thing. I think our goal is to not increase those things if we can, except for parking. If we can do that, that'd be great. But again, I want to thank you for your time and your feedback, and, we'll take Mike's credo to heart. We'll try to maximize that space and be more cost-effective where we can. So without further questions, do you guys have anything else to add? Seeing,
Thank you.
Great.
and with that, we'll adjourn the ad hoc community pool project committee meeting. Thanks.
Thank you.